Hello everyone, welcome to my podcast. I'm Ufoma and I'm interested in a little bit of everything. Today's podcast is about how to process emotions and why it is important to learn how to. A while ago, I came across videos of Dr. Gabor Mate, a Canadian physician who has a special interest and experience in dealing with trauma, autoimmune diseases, addictions, and generally mind-body connections, and how our state of mind and the trauma of the mind can manifest as diseases in the body. And this piqued my interest a lot. I also found out that women have a higher incidence of autoimmune diseases, and as someone who has had an autoimmune disorder since childhood, I found that to be also interesting. When you do a little bit of research, you find out that there are several reasons, whether biological, hormonal, and genetic, why women have a higher predisposition to autoimmune diseases. And you should read up on that if that is something that interests you. But this particular podcast is going to be focused on unprocessed emotions. Recent scientific studies are starting to explore the link between unprocessed or repressed emotions and autoimmune diseases or diseases in general. Of course, this does not mean that every autoimmune disease is as a result of unprocessed emotions or suppressed emotions, but if there is even the slightest chance of getting better outcomes via managing emotions or preventing illnesses via managing emotions, should we not take it? Should we not take this chance? I believe that if the mind-body connection theory is to be believed, women are more prone to autoimmune diseases because many of us were raised with the belief that a good woman is a sacrificial woman. We sacrifice our peace to make others happy. We do this without expecting them to do the same in return. But a lot of the times, the peace we keep by silencing our own reservations or disagreements or what have you only serves to start a war within us. And this does not mean we should be always disagreeable. This does not mean that we should never, make compromises. But if this compromise, if this sacrifice is too great a burden, I think that it is something that we need to talk about. It is something that we need to voice. We should not abandon ourselves because we are trying to be agreeable. Of course, this is a multi-layered topic and there's only so much one can tackle on a 5 to 10 minute podcast, but it definitely goes beyond what I've talked about. So how do we manage our emotions? Before I go on, I must say that podcasts like mine are not meant to replace professional assistance. And if you're really struggling with managing your emotions or past traumas that cause difficult emotions in you, you should definitely make plans to speak with a professional. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is to realize and believe that you can learn to navigate your emotions in a healthy way. Our belief systems really affect the probability of success. That is what I believe. And if you believe that your emotions are just something that are out of your control, that is what they would most likely always be. It can feel overwhelming like an ocean. Our emotions can feel overwhelming, but even though it feels daunting, I believe that we can learn how to sail smoothly, at least for the most part. I think of our emotions like the ocean, and despite how daunting and massive and, fear-inspiring it is, we have sailors on it day and night, sailing. And in the same vein, even though our emotions are just this very uncharted territory for most of us, I think that we can learn to sail, smoothly for the most part. The next point I'm going to talk about is to start slowly. There's a quote that talks about eating an elephant and how the best way to do it is bit by bit. And I think the same goes for hard emotions. So let's say I lost a purse, and that purse was really important to me, and I've been avoiding dealing with the loss of that purse or the emotions that the loss triggers in me. I'm just using a purse for an example, but it could be anything, and I'm just using a purse because it's like something that is not so traumatic to use as an example, right? So if I wanted to deal with the loss of the purse and the emotions that it brings, I'm going to pick a day when my mood is not so bad, a day when the weather is not so bad. And the reason for this is because I want to avoid a downward spiral, because if I'm going to deal with this emotion on a day when I'm already down and a day when the weather is really bad, I think it's just going to make us fall, or the person fall into a downward spiral. So pick a day that is like maybe kind of good, to deal with your emotions. And the next thing I'm going to do is to set a timer for 5 minutes. Set a timer for 5 minutes, and I'm going to use that time to think about the loss of my purse and how that makes me feel. And I'm going to use this time to name the emotions that this memory bring up in me. Okay, so it will be advisable to get a chart online about the different types of emotion, like an emotion wheel, so that you can really pinpoint the emotion that this loss brings up in you, or this event brings up in you. If you are not able to get into the memory that you're trying to process, or the event or the emotion that you're trying to process, if you're not able to get into it, there's no need to force it. You can just use the time to work on your breath. You can just use the time to observe yourself, without distractions. You can just use the time to be present in your body and, work on your breath, do some breath work. But if you are able to also get into the emotion and get into the feeling, get into the memory that you are trying to process, the event that you're trying to process, I think it's also important to walk through it using breath work, using deep breaths. We can look up breath work and what it's about. But I think that it's very important to hold on to both. There are some people who believe that, being observant of your breath, while in this state of meditation is another crutch to avoid dealing with the memory and with the emotion and the event that you're trying to process. But I do not think so. I think that it's possible to hold on to both. It's possible to process these emotions using the breath. Okay, I believe that. So what I was saying is just breathe through it, and learn to just be present with it, and learn to allow it to flow through. That it's gonna pass. I feel like, just like I talked about our emotions being the ocean, I think that another analogy for it is like, if you ever go to all these events where they kind of teach you water safety and what to do if you find yourself in a body of water and you cannot swim, they always say do not panic, right? That if you do not panic, and you're calm, there's a likelihood that you could remember enough to keep yourself afloat. And I think the same thing works for our memories. If we do not panic when these difficult emotions are coming up, if we do not panic when these hard and overwhelming emotions are coming up, we can float. I do believe that we can float. So that is the second thing I'm talking about, which is breath work. And I think that and setting a time. And I believe that if we keep regular dates with these things that we're trying to process, if we keep our regular 5-minute dates when we're starting now, maybe once a week or once in 2 weeks, 5-minute dates to revisit these things that we're trying to process, that eventually we will build enough stamina to go longer and to be able to eventually move through them so that they do not have the effect that they have on us. They do not have as heavy an effects as they have on us. Once the alarm goes off, we should move on to something else. Ideally something that involves physical movements. Could be yard work, or doing the dishes, or doing the laundry. I believe that it's important to plan what to do after the alarm goes off so that we just immediately get into it. Eventually we will be able to build up stamina, like I said before, to deal with processing our emotions for longer periods, but it's important to start small, especially for the more overwhelming type of emotions. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is emotions need to move. So observing our emotions and naming them is a very crucial stage in processing our emotion, but it is not the only thing we must do. It is a good first step, but we need to move them. We need to move the emotions. So we can do this through dancing and shaking. You can look up somatic exercises to help you if this is something that you're interested in. You can move the emotions through maybe finding a rage room and breaking stuff in a safe and controlled environment. You can move them through crying, because there are some people who really do not cry. They do not, you can watch a movie to help you, it's good to act like a cathartic device, right? I don't know if that's the right word, but you could find a movie that helps you cry so that you can use it as a device to get these emotions moving, right? Get the congealed emotions moving. And you can also move it through talking with a trusted person. It could be like a family member, someone you trust, a friend, or a trusted professional. It is important to get these emotions moving, get them moving. Okay, you can also move emotions through journaling so that the feeling, the memory, whatever you're dealing with is not just in your mind, going about, not just in your mind like as a ruminating thought, but on paper or on a digital device. It's good to get it out there. You can also move it through screaming. Obviously, don't go screaming at your neighbors, but if you could get to a wooded area with nobody around, you could just let it rip. What I do sometimes is to scream during a very heavy thunderstorm, a very heavy rain, where there's a lot of thunder and lightning, and my screams will get lost in the sound of the loud thunders, but I would be feeling lighter at the end of that session, at the end of the screaming session. So I think about something frustrating me or something I'm really angry about, and I just let it rip during the thunderstorm. All right, so the next thing, obviously the way you move the emotion will depend on the emotion itself that you're dealing with, the emotion itself that you have named, but these are some of the things that you can do. Another important aspect of processing emotions is to act. While we need to name our emotions, breathe through it, move it, we also need to act. There are certain traumas and losses that we cannot do anything about, and for those we may need professional help to come to a place of acceptance, but there are some we can do things about, like our boundaries being crossed, or someone consistently disrespecting us or our boundaries. And if we can do things to prevent more injury to ourselves and we refuse to do so, we are self-abandoning, and that is not fair to ourselves. So it doesn't matter the amount of screaming you do. If there's something you can do about it, you need to do it. Okay, of course you can scream to process it and come to a place of calmness, where you can approach this issue with a clear mind. But if there's something you can do about your boundaries being disrespected, or if there's something you can do about something that is causing you so much difficult emotions and you are not doing them, It is a form of self-abandonment, and we should not do that to ourselves because it is not fair. Okay. We've come to the end of today's podcast, but before I leave, I need to state that I do not believe that most of us, if not all of us, would ever get to the place where processing difficult emotions would be easy, and where the memories of past traumas or events that have hurt us would never pop up. I do not think that would ever get to that place. But I believe that with practice, and if needed, help from trustworthy professionals and loved ones, we can have more sunny days than gloomy days. I like to picture difficult emotions and difficult days like a gloomy weather. It will pass. But what we do while it lasts will have an effect on whether its presence is bearable. Thank you for listening and have a great day.